Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started by welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see all of you guys here this morning. Today's class is called our group learning program, and this is actually the very last class of the 7-month program. And then next Sunday, I'm going to be restarting this program from the very beginning. The group learning program is a program where over a period of 7 months, I walk students through this book called Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. Every Sunday, I go chapter by chapter in this book, helping students to develop a foundation in the path to enlightenment. And today's class is titled The Five Hindrances and the Seven Factors of Enlightenment. This is where you're learning about the 5 things that are going to hinder you from being able to get to enlightenment. Because over the last 7 months, I've been teaching students the foundational teachings of how to actually get to enlightenment. And now the very last class, I teach them, well, these are the things that are going to actually hinder you or block you from being able to get to enlightenment. They're obstructions. But then there's solutions of how to overcome those obstacles. And I'm going to be sharing those too, so you can understand what the hindrances are and the solutions to them. The way that we start our class is we start with meditation. So I'll guide you guys in a breathing mindfulness meditation session, and then afterwards I'll share with you guys the 5 hindrances. If you'd like to join for meditation, the way that we start is with chanting. I see you guys have the chanting sheets in front of you. These are Pali chants. This is the language that the teachings of the Buddha are originally in, and we have what's called the Pali Canon, which are 45 large volumes of books that are about this thick, which are the teachings of the Buddha. So when we chant in the Pali language. I do these chants in order to ease the mind into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself, because it helps to promote awareness of mind and awareness of breath, easing into meditation, actually getting more benefit out of the meditation. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, because everything that he taught was oral. Nothing was written down during his lifetime, because the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. Now, we probably don't think about writing things down as technology, but 2,500 years ago, that was technology, and it just didn't exist in that region of the world. So they used chanting or recitation of the teachings as a way to commit the teachings to memory so that they could then practice the teachings. So these chants, there isn't anything mystical or magical about them. It's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony. It's not prayer or anything like that. Remember, during the lifetime of the Buddha, they just used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory. Nowadays, we have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this. We don't actually need to chant in order to remember the teachings, but I still chant because it helps to ease the mind into the meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation. If you read the English translations, you probably see a lot of respect and gratitude and appreciation for the Buddha. And because of that, I think that his students probably created these chants either during his life or after his death, because he was helping students to move from anger and sadness and frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings are eliminated through attaining enlightenment. And by training your mind to get to this enlightened mental state, you only experience peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy. That's what the mind is experiencing in the enlightened mental state. So if you learn from a teacher of how to move from these discontent feelings to the peace and joy, and this teacher didn't want anything from you and didn't expect anything from you, you probably have a lot of respect and gratitude for that person too. So that's why I suspect these chants were actually created by his students, because a Buddha doesn't have arrogance or ego. They don't walk around and say, here, chant these things to me to show me respect, right? A Buddha is not going to do that. An enlightened being is not going to do that. The ego is gone. So these chants weren't even created by the Buddha, but I still do them because it helps to get more benefit out of the meditation. And I do have a lot of respect for the Buddha for what he actually did during his lifetime. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to. Just keep in mind that it's not mystical or magical. It's not a prayer or worship or anything like that. And then in terms of your body positioning, there's actually 4 positions to meditate in. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you can learn these 4 different positions because you're going to need them at different times. Your body can't be in the same position all the time. But oftentimes students are learning in the seated position. So I'll give you some guidance on this, that if you're on the floor, you might have a cushion under your rear. This kind of softens your seat a bit. And then just lightly cross your legs. There's not just one way to actually sit. So if you're comfortable with your legs crossed, that's fine. But if there's other options that you feel comfortable with, feel free to use that. This isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way. It's about finding what's comfortable for you. But if you are going to cross your legs, having them lightly crossed is best so that it doesn't impede circulation and you don't feel pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles and allows the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way. Some people might choose to put their palms on their thighs or their knees or their palms up. Some people might rest their hands comfortably in their lap. You can find whatever's comfortable for you. And the same thing goes for anybody who's sitting in a chair or on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair. Some of you guys at home that are tuning in, you might be sitting in any of these kinds of ways. You can just rest your feet comfortably on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, or you can really sit however you like, because here I'm in a chair and I'm actually got my legs crossed in a chair. And the same thing with the hands and the arms. You can put them wherever you're comfortable. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like to sternum up in the shoulders back. This will keep the mind attentive and alert so you can actively train the mind during meditation. And it also makes it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So I'll ease us into meditation with some chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on. And then I'll come back in with some guidance to be able to help you during the meditation. There's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're meditating together. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. So you're welcome to join along in the chanting if you'd like. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Potang Mahakawanhang Apiwateyami Sawakato Mahakawata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatava Manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Potang Mahakavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone online as well. Welcome to those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. As I mentioned, today is our group learning program where I'm sharing with students the whole journey to enlightenment and how to move the mind to the enlightened mental state in a way that you can build up the foundation of your understanding. It's a 7-month program where students learn slowly but surely using the first book of this book series. This first book is available for you at no cost. You can actually get it by downloading it on our website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for our printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon as well. And what the students are doing on the path to enlightenment is they're learning, they're growing, they're developing, they're cultivating wisdom, they're training their mind. Nothing in the teachings of the Buddha is about belief. So you're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. You're actually learning teachings, you're examining them and investigating them, you're reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false, and then you're practicing teachings. And you need guidance from a teacher. And when you're integrating these teachings into your practice, it's gradually transforming your mind, eliminating certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered. There's these 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind, and then he taught how to uproot them through various tools and techniques. These individual problems that he discovered, these pollutions or taints or defilements, he referred to them as fetters. What the 10 fetters are is they're pollutions that are hindering the mind and keeping it trapped in the unenlightened state. And he referred to them as fetters because during ancient times, they would attach a fetter to your ankle if you were a criminal and they were trying to keep you confined to a certain area. So a fetter is like a shackle and a chain and a ball, and it keeps you trapped in a certain area. And they would just have prisoners and criminals in a certain field, and that's how they would keep them there. Where today we have prison cells and jail cells and things like this, they would attach a fetter to your ankle. So the Buddha described these 10 pollutions as fetters because it's keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state, where you keep experiencing anger and sadness and frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others just keep being experienced over and over and over again in the unenlightened state. But you can uproot these pollutions in the mind and get to a point where you're only experiencing peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy, where your mind has been purified. And now you only experience those peaceful mental state. Your mind will be focused. It'll be concentrated. You'll have clarity of mind and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships will really blossom. They'll be at ease because you won't be bitter and hostile and harsh in your relationships any longer. You'll notice that you're not even in a bad mood. By the time you get to enlightenment, the causes and conditions that are producing a bad mood have been uprooted out of the mind. So these 10 fetters is what you're working to eliminate on the path to enlightenment, and the Buddha's guiding you and teaching you how to do that. And the topic that I have today for you guys, which is titled the 5 Hindrances, these are the 5 things that the Buddha taught that are going to hinder somebody or obstruct somebody from getting to enlightenment. 4 out of the 5 are actually part of the fetters, because you're going to see that what the Buddha does is he kind of points to teachings in different ways, and he collects teachings, and you'll sometimes see this correlation or this connection from one to the other. So this is actually the last class, as I mentioned, of this group learning program that I've been teaching for 7 months and helping students to understand how to get to this enlightened mental state. And then the last class, I share the 5 hindrances or the 5 obstructions. And then next Sunday, I'm going to be starting from the very beginning. So if you're here in Chiang Mai, or if you'd like to tune in online as you travel, you're welcome to do that, because I teach here at 9 a.m. and I also live stream it. But then also at 9 p.m. from home, I teach the same class. So no matter where you are in the world, there should be a live class available for you on Sundays. And then I also teach it on Wednesdays as well. And if you can't make the live class for any reason, they're recorded. So you could watch it at your own pace on YouTube, on Facebook, on our podcast. You could listen to it. So there's ways for you to gradually digest this content and even get personal guidance, because you're going to need personal guidance along the way. So you can actually get help by asking questions in classes. You can post in our Facebook group and I'll answer your question there. You can send me a private message and I'll help you that way. Or you can schedule personal guidance, either meeting here in Chiang Mai or any other city that I might be in. Or you can also schedule online and we can meet in Zoom. So as you travel around the world, it's one thing to learn in classes, but it's a whole other thing to relate it to your specific challenges in life. So that's where personal guidance comes in. So you can take the teachings that you're learning in the classes and the books and relate it to specific things that you're challenged with in day-to-day life. So I'm going to share with you guys the 5 hindrances throughout today's class. And if you have questions, you're welcome to ask any and all questions that you like. Here at the temple, if you would like to ask questions, we have microphones here in the white bowl. This way, if you use a microphone, we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you didn't use a microphone, they wouldn't be able to hear you online. So all you need to do is get a microphone and press the gray button. The lights will come on, and then you just hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here, and they'll be able to hear you online. And then you can just keep the microphones with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have another question. So you can use the microphones and keep them with you. And for those of you guys online, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that and answer your question. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So first, just to get us started with this topic of the 5 hindrances, I have some words of the Buddha here where he's acknowledging these 5 hindrances, and he's at least mentioning them. There's other parts of his teachings where he's explaining how to eliminate them, and that's what I'm going to teach you. But just to help you build confidence that the Buddha actually taught the 5 hindrances, this is from the original source teachings of the Buddha, where he's mentioning the 5 hindrances. He says, "Monks, there are these 5 hindrances." What 5? The hindrance of sensual desire, the hindrance of ill will, the hindrance of complacency, the hindrance of restlessness and worry, the hindrance of doubt. These are the 5 hindrances. This noble eightfold path is to be developed for direct knowledge or experience of these 5 hindrances, for the full understanding of them, for their complete destruction, for their abandoning. So what he's teaching is that it's the Eightfold Path that is going to lead to the elimination of these 5 hindrances. In order to eliminate these 5 hindrances, you're going to need to learn the Eightfold Path. In fact, if you're even interested or remotely interested in getting to enlightenment, you're going to need to know the Eightfold Path. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha that guides you to enlightenment. So when we talk about the path to enlightenment, it's the Eightfold Path that is the path to enlightenment. And I teach this as part of all the foundational classes and programs and retreats that I teach. So this group learning program that's coming up, that I'm going to be restarting next week, I'm going to take 3 individual Sundays and I'm going to be breaking down the Eightfold Path into 3 sections, and I'm going to thoroughly teach it to you using the words of the Buddha over the course of 3 Sundays. And then I have other programs that I teach the Eightfold Path to, like next week, not this Monday, but next Monday, we're going to be starting the Harmony in Relationships course, where over 5 days, I'm going to be teaching students how to develop harmony in their relationships. And on the very first day, I teach the Eightfold Path because it's so crucial for someone's development on the path to enlightenment that I make sure that I teach that in all the programs that I teach. So it's the Eightfold Path that's going to guide you to enlightenment, and it's also going to help you to eliminate the 5 hindrances. So you need to know the Eightfold Path inside and out, backwards and forwards, up, down, left, right. You need to have it committed to your memory in order to get to enlightenment, and thus also eliminate the 5 hindrances. But there's other tools that the Buddha taught that integrate into the Eightfold Path that are actually going to more specifically target these 5 hindrances. And he teaches this in other parts of his teachings. You can see these very long discourses where he talks about the 7 factors of enlightenment. And this is what's going to eliminate the 5 hindrances along with the Eightfold Path. The 7 factors of enlightenment are plugged into the Eightfold Path. Sometimes based on the name of the 7 factors of enlightenment, people think that what this teaching is to determine whether you are enlightened or you aren't. But this isn't what the 7 factors of enlightenment are. They're actually a tool to fine-tune the mind and actually bring it to the middle and really hone it and be able to go in with kind of like a fine tool in order to refine the mind and train the mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first teach you the 7 factors of enlightenment, and then I will teach you the 5 hindrances and how to use the 7 factors of enlightenment in order to eliminate the 5 hindrances. Because without understanding the 7 factors of enlightenment, you wouldn't actually be able to eliminate the 5 hindrances, because it's the 7 factors of enlightenment that are working to eliminate the 5 hindrances. So just a little bit of background on the 5 hindrances before we move into the 7 factors of enlightenment is that these are very similar to the 10 fetters. There are 4 out of the 5 hindrances are actually fetters. So you'll be able to learn and practice the Eightfold Path to eliminate all the 10 fetters to include the 7 factors of enlightenment. This is what's going to actually work to eliminate the 7 or the 5 hindrances. Gautama Buddha's teachings oftentimes point to each other, and this is where you can see things like mindfulness shows up in the Eightfold Path, it shows up in the 7 factors of enlightenment, and it shows up in other parts of his teachings. And you can see how the 5 hindrances and the 10 fetters are also connected to each other. You can see how the 5 precepts plugs into the Eightfold Path. There's all these connections between the teachings, and you can see that throughout learning his teachings. So essentially these 5 hindrances, these are the struggles or the impediments to the path to enlightenment. If you're ever experiencing struggles or impediments or obstacles in your journey to enlightenment, it's oftentimes helpful to look at the 5 hindrances so you can see which one of these is blocking you from being able to get to enlightenment, and then implement the solution that is being shared of how to get to enlightenment. So here's the 7 factors of enlightenment, which are going to be a tool to help you to eliminate these 5 hindrances. The first one is called mindfulness. This is something that you learn as part of the Eightfold Path. There's a step called right mindfulness. And what you learn when you first start learning mindfulness is what it means is awareness of mind. Oftentimes in modern language, and people are using this word, they're not using it in the same way that the Buddha used it. They might be using it in replace of careful. Someone might say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to that table? What they're really saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table? But this isn't how the Buddha used the word mindful. He used it as awareness of mind, because if you're going to purify your mind and get to the peace and joy that is the enlightened mental state where you no longer have any pollution emotions in the mind, you're going to need to have awareness of what's going on in your own mind. Because oftentimes in the unenlightened state, we don't have awareness. We just kind of plow through the world, not really thinking about what's going on within our own mind. So when you practice mindfulness, you're developing awareness of your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings and emotions, these kinds of things, what's going on through your own mind. And you're developing that through the meditation. That's how you develop mindfulness. So that's why we start with breathing mindfulness meditation each class. And this would be wise for you to build up a practice where you're meditating 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. And that can sound like a lot for someone who's just getting started. But if you look at your life, there's probably certain unbeneficial things that you're doing that you could clear out of your life, and it'll make more space for you to be able to do things like meditation. And you can gradually build up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. And oftentimes students are starting with 10 minutes a session or 15 minutes a session. So wherever you start is where you start. You're not in a race with anyone. You're not in a competition. It's your own journey to enlightenment, and you can gradually expand this. So if it's a matter of 1 session for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, you'll notice that the 2 for 15 is actually more effective because it's frequency that is the more effective tool. And then if you have those 2 for 15, then you just gradually expand them. And it can take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to a practice of 2 or 3 meditations for 30 minutes or more. So your meditation is what's going to help you build this awareness of mind. And more specifically, what mindfulness is helping you to develop is what's called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. I'm going to talk about this at the end of class where you can understand mindfulness more directly, because here I'm just describing it as awareness of mind. And that's usually where students are just starting out. But as you get going with mindfulness, you would like to really develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness. There's 4 individual aspects of mindfulness that you will ultimately need to develop in order to make your way to enlightenment. But when you first getting started, just awareness of mind is a good place to start. And it's wise to be practicing mindfulness all the time, from the moment you're just starting to wake up, all day long, and then as you're falling asleep at night, you need to have that awareness of mind. So it's always wise to be practicing mindfulness. Then the second factor, or the second tool that the Buddha shares, is called investigation. What investigation is where you're investigating the teachings, you're examining them, you're diving into them, you're rolling up the sleeves, you're studying the teachings. This is one of the factors of enlightenment, that you're going to need to investigate the teachings to bring in the wisdom that you need in order to gradually progress to enlightenment. If you weren't investigating the teachings, you wouldn't know whether they're true or whether they're false, and you wouldn't know how to actually practice them in any given situation. So you're going to need to examine them and study them. This keen awareness of the teachings, questioning them, and trying to really understand them. Then there's energy. What energy is this is where you have effort, determination, ambition, initiative, this willingness to do something. If you're feeling dull and lethargic and complacent, it's because the enlightenment factor of energy isn't being practiced. You haven't arisen this ambition, this enthusiasm, this motivation in the mind. And you can arise that in the mind. You don't have to sit in that dullness and lethargic condition because it's no fun to feel that way. So you need to be able to lift the mind up and bring it to the middle. And that's where you'll find the peace and the joy. As long as you're on one side where you're chasing things, you're not going to be peaceful there. But if you're over here where you're dull and lethargic, you're not going to be peaceful there either. So you need to be able to bring the mind to the middle. So the enlightenment factor of energy is helping to bring the mind to the middle, where there's this initiative, this willingness to do something, this ambition and enthusiasm. Then there's this enlightenment factor of joy. This is where the mind is pleased and delighted, where there's this unconditioned gladness, not associated with any particular object. In the unenlightened state, you'll get happy when something happens your way. So if it's sunny outside, you'll get happy. Or if you get a raise at work, you'll get happy, right? Or you get acknowledged by your boss for a certain project, you'll get happy. Or if your mom does this, you'll be happy. Or if your dad does this, you'll be happy. But the problem with that is that's conditional happiness. Based on some condition, you will now be happy. And that condition isn't permanent. That condition's going to change. So as soon as that condition changes, your happiness is gone. So if you base your happiness on the sun, for example, and you get really happy when it's sunny, that means when it rains, you'll be sad. because the sun is not permanent. So that's why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because the unenlightened mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. And as long as your mind keeps doing that, you're never going to be able to get to permanent happiness. You'll have conditional happiness, which arises, it changes, and it fades away. This is why when you first got together with maybe a boyfriend or girlfriend, you were so happy, you were so excited. Wow, someone's showing me affection. We're going out to dinner and the movies and the park, and we're having great conversations. There might even be intimate contact where you're having sex and things like this, and you feel so much pleasure. But then over time, the expectations start to grow. You start wanting things from that person starts wanting things from you. You can't do what they want you to do permanently. They can't do what you want them to do permanently. And now you get angry and frustrated and agitated. And now you guys break up. And when you were together, you were happy. But when you were away, now you're angry or sad or frustrated, or you might have felt lonely or bored. This is because the mind is craving and holding on. You're basing your inner feelings on, if I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, I'm happy. But if I'm single, then maybe the mind is sad or frustrated, right? Or feeling lonely or bored. This is called conditional happiness. And as long as your mind keeps forming inner feelings based on some condition, like the sun, or what mom and dad does, what your boss does, whether you have a boyfriend or girlfriend or what have you, as long as you keep forming your happiness on those things aren't permanent. So if your bank account's here, you're happy. But if your bank account's here, you're sad. Right? This is called conditional feelings. Your mind just basically goes up and down and up and down. But what the Buddha is guiding you to is unconditional happiness or unconditional joy, where the mind can just be joyful all the time, not based on any condition. So the Eightfold Path is going to teach you how to get to this unconditional happiness, this unconditional joy, where the mind can just always be joyful. It's not joyful based on any particular thing. Whether it's sunny outside or it's raining outside, you can still be happy. It doesn't matter. Or if your bank account's here or your bank account's here, you can still be happy. It doesn't matter. Your mom does this or your mom does that, you can still be happy. But right now you find that very hard because the mind hasn't been trained to be able to have this unconditioned joy that the Buddha is describing in the Seven Factors of Enlightenment. Then there's this fifth factor, which is called tranquility. What tranquility is where the mind's relaxed, steady, stable, having peacefulness and stillness of mind. You're going to need to apply the effort to bring that calmness into the mind. Then there's concentration, where the mind is alert and attentive, and you're able to give your full attention to a single thought or a certain object or activity. This is called singleness of mind. And you learn about this in the Eightfold Path. Just like mindfulness, you learn about that in the Eightfold Path too. Concentration is where you can be focused and have singleness of mind. Maybe you have that a little bit of a challenge doing that. Maybe when you're in a business meeting, your mind kind of wanders and you're daydreaming about certain things. Or maybe if you're working on an email, maybe your mind wanders to something else. Or maybe if you're washing dishes, your mind kind of wanders to something else. But more and more, if you can focus and have singleness of mind and train your mind to do that, you'll be able to have more clarity in your mind. It's kind of like if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod and you grinded this steel rod back and forth on the wood. Initially, the steel rod's going to bounce around a lot because there's no groove yet. But if you keep grinding that steel rod back and forth, over time, you're going to get a deeper and deeper groove, and your mind's going to stay in that groove. And when it pops out, you're going to know it, and you're going to be able to bring it right back. But eventually, if you grind that steel rod back and forth enough, your groove is going to get so deep that the mind will always be focused. It'll always be concentrated. So that's what you need to be able to do, is develop this concentration in the mind where the mind can just always be focused. But initially, your mind's going to bounce around a lot. So wherever you see your mind not focused on the present moment, on singleness of mind, you would like to cut that off. So if you're washing dishes and your mind's wandering, cut that off and bring the mind back. Or if you're in a business meeting and your mind's thinking about something else, you cut that off, bring it back. Right here, when I'm talking, if your mind's thinking about something else, you would like to cut that off and bring your mind back and get used to focusing on just a single object. And then more and more, you get this deep groove and your mind will just always be focused. You'll just always be concentrated. You'll be able to see how that's the case. And the mind can be trained to develop this concentration. Then the seventh factor is called equanimity. This is the mental calmness and composure, the evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation. So whenever your mind is rattled or unsteady or unstable, you're not practicing equanimity. Perhaps if someone called you and said, hey, your mom's been in a terrible car accident. She's being rushed to the hospital. She's in the back of an ambulance. You might want to grab your car keys and run across town, hurry up and get to the hospital, right? The mind's shaken up from this. And this isn't actually going to solve the problem. Rushing across town to get to the hospital isn't going to actually solve anything, because you might actually get in a car accident yourself. But at the very least, you're going to show up to the hospital, your mind will be shaken up, and you won't be able to talk to the doctors and the nurses and make wise decisions about what you need in order to help your mom. So what the Buddha is teaching you is to have this calmness and composure, especially in difficult situations. So when you get that phone call that mom's been in a terrible car accident, you like to remain calm and make your way to the hospital. And now you can talk to the doctors and nurses in a way that you can think and understand what it is that they have to say. And now you can make wise decisions to help mom. Having your mind all shaken up doesn't actually help. So these 7 factors of enlightenment are actually tools and techniques that you use in order to bring the mind to the middle. And the way that the Buddha organizes this is that mindfulness, the first one, should be practiced all the time. From the time you're just waking up all day long until you're falling asleep, you're practicing awareness of mind. But then when you see your mind is sluggish or dull or complacent, you lift up the mind by practicing the investigation, energy, and joy. When you bring in investigation of the teachings, when you bring in the energy and you bring in the joy, that's going to lift your mind out of that dull, sluggish state and bring it to the middle. But then when you see your mind's overactive and excited and, really bouncing off the walls, that's where you bring in the tranquility, the concentration, the equanimity, and now the mind comes to the middle. And now more and more as your mind's in the middle, you get that nice groove that we were talking about, where the mind just stays there all the time. So this is the 7 factors of enlightenment that I'm going to then now use to help you understand how to eliminate the 5 hindrances. So I'm going to introduce you to the 5 hindrances and show you how to use these in order to then solve the 5 hindrances and overcome these obstacles or obstructions to your enlightenment. But before we move on, I would like to see if you guys have questions on the 7 factors of enlightenment to be sure you understand them. So as I mentioned here at the temple, if you could use the microphones, and then online you can put those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or in Zoom you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like, Claire, you have a question?
Yeah. So on awareness of mind, that term, it's sort of a general background monitoring of what's coming through my mind. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, you can almost think of it like a virus scanner on your computer, that it's kind of sitting there always running, and it's kind of looking at your hard drive. And then anytime a virus lands on your hard drive, boom, it takes action, it quarantines it, and it cleans it up and gets rid of it, right? So your mindfulness is the same way. While right now you're talking to me and we're having a conversation, in the background, your mindfulness is running and observing the mind and trying to determine, is there any discontentedness? Is there any unwholesome thoughts that are coming up in the mind? And if so, if the mindfulness ever notices that, then you take action to cut that off and let it go and get it out of the mind. You like the virus scanner? Yeah. The Buddha never used that analogy, of course, because virus scanners didn't exist during his lifetime, but you can understand it now using the analogies that we understand. You have a question?
I was just doing meditation at the beginning, and every time my mind wanders off something else, I create a little person, said, off you go, and then just my current way to cut off those thoughts, but by creating that little person, there's another thought, isn't it?
I'm sorry, what's the last part?
But by creating this little person in my head to cut off the thought that I have, there's another thought that I'm creating.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do I? So there's never ending. I was like, I see you. You need to go too, and then there's another person at the back.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So the way that you do this is that as you're making your way to developing your mind, you're going to have these little things that are happening. So you focus on the breath during your meditation. And when you notice that the mind moves off the breath, you would like to internally cut it off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. But as you're first getting started, this can be really challenging because the mind doesn't have much discipline yet. So if you need to do things like let it go, let it go, let it go. And if that helps you for now to let go and bring the mind back to the breath, you can use that. But probably 3 months, 6 months into your journey, you'll need to eliminate that too, because you need to be able to internally cut off and let go. And the reason why is because in daily life, when your mind is holding on to something, you need to be able to internally cut it off and let it go. So if you need to kind of talk to the mind a little bit in order to kind of coax it into letting go, you can use that temporarily. But over time, you're going to need to create it almost like a reaction. Like as soon as you notice something unwholesome, boom, you just take action and cut it off and let it go. But in the meantime, you might need to talk to the mind a little bit like this to kind of coax it into getting more and more comfortable to let go. Because your mind in the unenlightened state, it's doing all these unwholesome and unwise things. And you've kind of got this parallel process of meditation and all these other teachings kind of running alongside, and you're trying to gradually catch up to the mind and get it to be more and more disciplined so you can envelop the mind. But in the meantime, where you're not there yet, you might need to do these little things to kind of get to the point where the mind is able to let go. So you'll see these kinds of things, but ultimately you'll be able to let that go too. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, let me see if we have any questions online here. Okay. Hello to everybody online. Nice to see you guys this morning. I don't see any questions there. So let's move on to the next thing, which is helping you guys understand the 5 hindrances. I'm going to talk about the first 3 here. I'm going to explain to you what they are, and then I'll explain to you the solutions. Then we'll go to the next 2. So the first one is called sensual desire. This is one of the 10 fetters as well. What sensual desire is this is where the mind is longing and yearning through the sense bases, wanting things to be permanently pleasing. So the mind is longing, yearning through the eyes, wanting permanently agreeable forms that you see. Or it's longing, yearning through the ears, wanting permanently agreeable sounds. Or you're longing, yearning through the nose, wanting permanently agreeable odors. Or you're longing, yearning through the tongue, wanting permanently agreeable flavors. Or the body, where the mind's longing, yearning through the body, wanting physical objects to touch the body that are permanently agreeable. Or the 6th sense base is the mind itself, where the mind is longing, yearning, wanting things to be permanently agreeable. But the challenge is that you live in an impermanent world. You're not going to get to a point where everything's permanently agreeable to you. So let me give you an example of this. Let's say you're in your car, you're driving down the road, you get to the stoplight, and now you stop and someone pulls up next to you with some music and you're like, man, that's awesome. That's my jam. Yeah, let's dance. Let's have fun. All right, this is great. Whatever music that is for you, right? It might be hip hop or rap or heavy metal or instrumental or whatever it is. You're like, wow, that's my jam. All right, yeah, let's go, right? So now you're so excited and you're so happy because this person's got some great music on. Well, now the light turns green and you get to the next traffic light and now you stop and some other car pulls up next to you with music that you don't like and you despise this music and you're repulsed by it. It's disagreeable to you because now you're hearing music that you don't like and now you might get frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Because the mind is longing, yearning with its central desire for this permanently agreeable sound. And you can't be in an environment where you have permanently agreeable sounds. It's just not possible. You're going to walk down the street someday and there's going to be somebody with a jackhammer, right? You're going to experience that. But that is impermanent, right? The mind is craving this permanence. And when you hear that jackhammer, you're going to be like, oh gosh, it's so horrible. Or say you're walking down the street and someone's walking in front of you and you smell this amazing cologne or this perfume and you're like, oh my goodness, that is the best smell ever. Oh, wow. But now that person goes and now you're walking down the street and you smell the sewer. You're repulsed by this, right? This is the mind's central desire. It's longing, yearning through these six sense bases, wanting things to be permanently agreeable. And when you experience agreeable contact through any of these six sense bases, because of craving, desire, attachment in your longing, yearning, you will get pleasant feelings. But then, because of your cravings, desires, attachments, when you have contact that is disagreeable to you, you will get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. This is called central desire. Remember, the teachings of the Buddha aren't explaining to you the way the world should be, and that if everybody follows rules and commandments, that the world will become a peaceful place. What he's explaining to you is the way the world is. He's explaining to you what you experience on a day-to-day basis. Because if you understand why your mind is experiencing painful feelings, then you can actually eliminate them. But if you don't understand why you're experiencing them, you'll never be able to eliminate them. So what central desire is explaining to you is that your mind is longing, yearning through these sense bases: the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind itself, all six of these. The mind's wanting permanently agreeable contact. But yet you live in an impermanent world. There's no way you're ever going to experience permanently agreeable contact. So as long as your mind's craving and longing, yearning for that, when you get what you want, you'll get pleasant feelings. But when you don't get what you want, you'll get painful feelings. So the mind needs to eliminate its central desire, where it realizes that when you're experiencing contact, it's just a sound, for example. It's not agreeable or disagreeable. It's just a sound. It's just music. It is impermanent. No reason to base your inner feelings on it. So someone pulls up to you with great music on the at the red light, and you find that music to be pretty interesting, and you're like, wow, I really like that music. All right, excellent. Yeah, you can have fun, right? You can have a good time. All right, let's dance, let's have a good time. But then when the person pulls up to you with music that you don't particularly care for, you don't have a preference for that music, it's like, all right, well, they're having fun, have a good time. And you know that it's impermanent. You don't have to form feelings of anger, sadness, or frustration just because of this impermanent situation. This situation is going to last for all of about 3 minutes, and then that person's going to go on, or you're going to go on. No reason to sit there and be frustrated and agitated about it. Or if you're walking down the street and you smell that odor coming up from the sewer, no need to be angry or frustrated or anything. It's an impermanent situation. It's only going to be for 30 seconds that you smell that particular smell, that particular odor, right? But the mind with its central desire won't understand this. This is where you're arising wisdom to be able to understand what's truly occurring within your own mind. And now you can take action to fix it. So what fixes this central desire is the elimination of craving, desire, attachment. Craving, desire, attachment is the longing, the yearning, the wanting things to be a certain way. That's what the unenlightened mind has. And the Buddha gives you essentially two techniques to be able to target this. It's the entire Eightfold Path that is working to eliminate central desire, but there's two things that are really targeting it. There's breathing mindfulness meditation, which is what we did this morning, and there's generosity. With breathing mindfulness meditation, when you're focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath, you're letting go and coming back. You're letting go and coming back. You're letting go and coming back. The goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Sometimes people think that when I teach it, but it's not. You're always going to have thoughts. The goal is to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner and to let it go easier and easier. Because if you think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you guys broke up and you were frustrated or angry or you were lonely or bored, your mind was holding on. You couldn't let go. Right? And you were angry and frustrated and missing that person and lonely and bored as long as your mind was holding on and wanting them to be permanent. But at some point, you were like, you know what? If they would like to be with someone else, let them go. Or they would like to move to another place, let them go. And your mind let them go. And that's where you regained your peacefulness and your joy came back into your mind because you let go. But in the unenlightened state, the mind has difficulty letting go. So that's why you're training your mind with breathing mindfulness meditation, 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. You're training it to let go because it doesn't know how to let go. So if 20, 30, 50 times during your meditation, you have to let go, let go, let go, let go, this is actually really good for your mind. Even an enlightened being, they're going to have thoughts during meditation, but they're going to notice it right away and they're going to let it go right away. The difference is in the unenlightened state, you'll have a bombardment of thoughts. You'll have boom, 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 many thoughts. Or you'll have a thought and you'll follow it. You'll indulge in it. You'll follow it for 2 or 3 minutes and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm meditating. Let me get my mind back over here, right? But in the enlightened state, you'll notice it right away and you'll let it go right away. And then there'll be this quietness and stillness in the mind for maybe 30 seconds, a minute or two. Then you'll have another thought. You'll notice it and you'll let it go. So your mind needs to be able to be trained to let go. And that's what the breathing mindfulness meditation is doing. Because with sensual desire, you can't let go. You smell that sewer and it's like, oh, that's so horrible. How, right? Or that music. Oh, how dare they play that music? Why don't they turn it down? Oh, you can't let go, right? The mind is holding on. So this breathing mindfulness meditation is training your mind to let go. And then eventually you get to the point where you never grab on. You never hold on. You understand all these things around you are impermanent. Then there's the practice of generosity. This is also training your mind to let go. Because when you have craving, desire, attachment, your mind will hold on. You'll have selfishness where you'll find it very difficult to share. What generosity is where you're giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation, without any expectation of anything in return. You're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. And when you're sharing, you're joyful in sharing. You're letting go. You're open-handed. You're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. With craving, desire, attachment in the mind, you might think, if I spend 3 hours doing that, I want this in return. Or if I spend 3 days doing this, I want this in return, right? By the time you get to the point where you're practicing pure generosity, you don't want anything in return. You're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return, right? And this is going to train your mind to let go of any kind of selfishness in the mind. So you can share your food, you can share your time, your effort, your energy, you can share anything. You're walking into a store, you notice that somebody's coming in behind you, you can hold the door, right? That's generosity. You didn't have to do that. That's sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. And you can let the person in behind you, you can let them go first. But you got to be careful. If you have any expectation, you're going to not be practicing pure generosity and you're going to be frustrated. Because if you're standing there holding the door, expecting them to say thank you, and they don't say thank you, you'll be agitated. You'll be annoyed. You might have experienced that where you've held the door for people and then they walked in and they didn't say thank you. You're never going to be in a situation where everybody says thank you, because that would be permanence. We live in an impermanent world. Some people are going to say thank you on the way in. Other people, they're going to be so engrossed in thought and what they need to buy from the store, they won't even recognize that somebody's even holding the door for them. They're just going to go right on through without saying thank you. And this is impermanence. But if your mind's craving permanence because of sensual desire, you'll struggle in that situation where someone doesn't say thank you, right? And you might have even stopped holding the door for people because you experience painful feelings when someone doesn't say thank you. And you might think the way to solve this is to stop holding the door for people. But that doesn't solve your problem. The problem is the mind has sensual desire. It wants things to be permanent. So you need to be able to be wise and practice generosity where you're giving and sharing with others. And this is going to help you. But you need to be able to do it without any expectation of anything in return. It's going to train your mind to let go. So this is sensual desire. And you also would like to guard your doorways to discontentedness. This is some words from the Buddha. He talks about guarding the doorways. What the doorways are is your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, your body, and the mind itself. Anytime you experience contact through these 6 sense bases, if it's agreeable, you're going to get pleasant feelings. If it's disagreeable, you're going to get painful feelings. So you need to guard these doorways. You need to guard them. Here's what I mean by this. At one point, I was getting rid of coffee. I was eliminating coffee. And I thought that, wow, I was doing so great. I had gone longer and longer and longer periods of time without coffee. I had gone up to like 4 weeks, even 8 weeks without coffee. And 8 weeks, no coffee. I was walking down the street. I was feeling all conceited, like, wow, look at me eliminating all these attachments. Wow, my mind's getting so peaceful. And I walked by a coffee shop and I got a smell. I got a whiff of the coffee, and boom, I was right in there getting a coffee. I was waiting in line. I was telling myself, what are you doing? You're going to get a headache. You're going to be in bed for 3 days with a headache. Why are you getting this coffee? You're so silly. Don't do this. Don't do this. My mind was talking to itself, but the craving was too strong. When I got up to the front of the line, I said, iced coffee, please, right? Because I really like iced coffee. And I got my coffee and I sit down and I drank about a third of it. And I was like, all right, I'm done with this. And I threw it away. And that was the last coffee I ever had many years ago, right? But it was that central desire that got me, because I wasn't guarding the doorways. I walked down the street and I got that whiff, and boom, my mind was right in there. So what I did for the next several months is, when I was walking down the street and I saw a coffee shop, I would go to the other side of the street. And I only needed to do this for a period of time until the craving was completely eliminated. So I needed to guard the mind. I needed to guard the doorways. I needed to move to the other side of the street. And I did that for a while until the craving was completely gone. And now I can go into a coffee shop. Students invite me sometimes. They're like, hey, David, I would like to talk to you. I have some questions. Can we meet at this coffee shop? Sure. Go down to the coffee shop, I'll get a smoothie or a bottle of water or something like this. No big deal. And I can sit there and smell the coffee all day long. And my mind is strong enough that I won't ever get a coffee again, because I understand what it does to my mind. With that caffeine, it really, gets it in this elevated state, which I'm not interested in, right? So you can get to the point where all your cravings are gone and your mind doesn't tug and pull because of this central desire. But in the meantime, you're going to need to guard the doorways. You're going to need to guard the eyes, the nose, the ears, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself, so that you can protect the mind and not allow it to pull you into the coffee shop, for example. Okay? Then we've got this ill will. What ill will is anger, this hostility, this hatred, the bitterness, the aggression, the resentment, the frustration, the irritation, the annoyance. And where this is coming from is actually the central desire. If it wasn't for central desire, you actually wouldn't have the anger and the hatred and the ill will, the resentment and the hostility. Because when the mind gets what it wants, because of that central desire, it gets happy, it gets excited. But when you don't get what you want, the mind falsely attributes this to something external. You might think that mom is making you angry, or brothers and sisters are making you angry, or your friends or family are making you angry. And when that anger and hostility is arising, now you become bitter and harsh and hostile through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. You become unskillful, thinking that it's something external that's causing your mind to be angry. But in reality, it's within your own mind that the mind is experiencing this. It's the central desire that if the mind gets what it wants, you're happy, and if you don't get what you want, you get these painful feelings and anger and hostility and frustration, and becoming unskillful is one of the things that is occurring. And as I mentioned to you, the teachings of the Buddha aren't based in belief. You can independently verify this for yourself. Look at a recent situation where you've been angry, you've been upset, you've been frustrated. Look at that situation. There was something your mind wanted, and if you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy. But you didn't get what you wanted, so you were annoyed, or you were frustrated, or you were agitated, and then you might have been unskillful. You might have been frustrated and agitated in your moral conduct through your intentions, your speech, and your actions were bitter and harsh and hostile. And now these people might have chose to leave out of your life because they weren't interested in being around the harshness and the bitterness. And that's not to say that that person wasn't doing something unwise, because they could have easily been doing something that was unwise. But what's causing your mind to be discontent is the central desire. And now when the mind's not getting what it wants, it experiences this anger, this hostility, this bitterness. And now your moral conduct becomes unskillful. And now you can't reside with all beings harmoniously because the mind is being bitter and harsh and hostile to other people. The way you solve this is with loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life. Loving kindness meditation is essentially rewiring the mind to be more loving and more kind, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Because with a lack of wisdom, when somebody does something that you don't want them to do, you'll go down this well-worn path of anger and hostility and bitterness. But you know where that leads. It leads to broken relationships. That's where that leads. That bitterness and hostility, that's where it leads, is broken relationships. So you need to get to the point where you're not interested in going down that path anymore. All those bushes and the grass and everything have been pushed back. That path is a well-worn path, and it's really easy for your mind to go down that path if you've been going down that path for a while. But now what you would like to do with the loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life is it's like getting out a machete and breaking your way through this new path and making your way through this new pathway and opening up this new path of loving kindness where you have this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, where you can understand any anger that you're experiencing. It's not coming from this other person. It's coming from your own mind. So there's no reason to be angry or upset with them, right? The anger is coming from within your own mind. So rather than going down this path where you're bitter and harsh and hostile, go down this path of loving kindness, where your mind can be having this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And the more you go down this path, this becomes the well-worn path. And now this path overgrows, and the mind won't go down that path anymore. You've essentially rewired the mind with this loving kindness meditation, which I teach in various programs. And then I teach you through the Eightfold Path how to practice loving kindness through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. So this course that I'm going to be teaching next week, it's going to, I think it's starting on the 21st, October 21st. It's called Harmony in Relationships. And part of that course, I'm going to be teaching loving kindness meditation, and I'm going to be teaching you how to practice loving kindness through your intentions, speech, and actions. But then also I teach it in the group learning program, and I teach it in all the other places that I'm teaching too. So if you learn with me consistently, you'll be able to learn loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life so that you can go out into the world and be more loving and kind with people. When you're putting out loving kindness, that's going to be what comes back to you more and more. But in your relationships now, if you've been bitter and harsh and hostile or aggressive or resentful, and that's what you're putting out, then you can see that's what comes back to you, right? In the relationships that you're the closest, like your parents, your siblings, your life partners, your children, people like this, those are the hardest relationships for you. And this is why you might think that they're the ones who are causing you to be angry. Because when you spend time with people like me, you're not angry. You're not frustrated. That's because you don't have any attachment to me. You don't want me to be any particular way, right? But with your mom and your dad and your brothers and your sisters and people like this, you want them to be a certain way. And when they're not that way, you get angry. But with me, you're not that way. So you need to train your mind to not have craving, desire, attachment, and wanting people to be a certain way. You need to love them as they are. Love them unconditionally. There's only one person in the world that's going to do things the same way as you every single time. Do you know who that is? Who's going to do things the same way as you every time? You. You're the only one, because you have unique experiences in your life. And only you are going to make decisions that way. Whereas if you can only love people, if they make decisions the same way as you, then you can only love one person, and that's you. And you might actually find that to be challenging and difficult sometimes, loving yourself, right? Sometimes you find that even challenging, right? So if you can only love someone that you agree with and that agrees with you, you can only love one person. So you need to be able to separate the decisions that people make from the person. Separate the person from the decisions, where you can disagree with mom and dad's decisions, but you can love them as a person, right? That you understand, like, yeah, of course I disagree with their decisions because that's just impermanence. Everybody's going to be making different decisions in the world. So you can separate the choices and decisions that someone makes from the person. That way you can still love the person unconditionally while still disagreeing with their choices and decisions. My mom used to make all kinds of decisions that I disagree with, but I can still love her as a person. Just love her unconditionally, right? And this is where you can get to real peace and real joy. Because if you can only love the people who agree with you, then you can't love everyone in the world. So the Buddha is teaching you through loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life, how to get to a point where you can love everybody. And love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, right? This active goodwill, right? That's what love is, where you have this genuine interest in seeing others be well. including this being, who you are. You need to have love for this being. Okay, so this is anger, hatred, ill will. This is something that's going to hinder you from getting to enlightenment, just like sensual desire. Sensual desire is going to hinder you because there's certain things that your mind's holding on to. Like when I was talking about coffee, you might have been like, oh my goodness, I'm not giving up my coffee. Oh, that tastes so good. Or I'm not giving up my glass of wine every day or every week or once a month. I'm not giving that up. No way. Well, as long as your mind is longing, yearning, and holding on to it, it's going to hinder you from getting to the peace and the joy. You can only be happy if you get your coffee. You can only be happy if you get your glass of wine. And then when you don't get it, you're irritable, you're grumpy. That's the ill will. Okay. Then there's something called complacency. Well, complacency is the dullness, the lethargic condition, the lack of motivation. Some people refer to this as sloth and torpor. If you read some of the really old translations of the teachings of the Buddha, they will refer to it that way. This is the dullness, the lethargic condition, the lack of motivation, the lack of enthusiasm. If you have complacency, where you're disinterested and you're not interested in learning and growing and developing, you're not willing to come to the temple, you're not willing to pick up a book, you're not willing to meditate, you're not willing to ask questions. If you're complacent, you won't get to enlightenment because you're not doing the work that you need to do to be able to learn and grow and develop into a better and better human being. Right? So the way that you solve this complacency is through the enlightenment factors of investigation, energy, and joy. Remember, investigation is keen study and research of the teachings. You're examining them. Then as you're examining the teachings, then there's going to be this energy, this motivation, this enthusiasm that springs up in the mind. And you're going to see this joy, this unconditioned gladness that starts coming into the mind. So this investigation is exactly the opposite thing that a complacent mind wants to do. When the mind's complacent, it's dull and it's lethargic, it doesn't want to investigate the teachings. It just wants to sit around and do nothing. But what you're doing is you're taking the mind in the opposite direction. You would like to apply effort and energy to bringing the mind towards this middle way where the mind can investigate the teachings, it can have this ambition and motivation and enthusiasm and this joy. So any questions on any of these three? I think there's a microphone that's still on somewhere. You guys might want to check your mics. Is your mic on? Might be still on. That's what that feedback is. Yeah? Okay. You have a question? Yeah. I think your mic's not on, though. You might have to turn it on. Are they on? Okay, yeah, now it's on.
Hello?
There you go.
Okay, it works. Yeah, I do have a question when you speak about like argue with parents. For me, like I think everyone, like we are born with this feeling others' emotions. But every time, like from my experience, like when I had discussion or like argument with my mom, it's like I getting like super emotional because she's like very like my parent, very close to me. So every time I get emotional, I started to, you know, getting angry or, you know, like when it's get like super, you know, argue so hardly, I started to cry, you know, like that, because I feel like I can't persuade her. But then I find like a solution to deal with that is if I keep rational and try to think of the problem and how we can solve it by discussion, then I get calmed down. But I feel like for myself, it's better to find a balance between being emotional and be rational. So then I can, you know, see my mom like as like my closest friend, and then we can try to find every time try and find a solution from our discussion. And that my experience just reminds me, like when you said, like how we can think of this person, like this, the character in our life, but kind of tease that out, like to see she is like a person, and then we can get more like calm down to, you know, discuss anything. I think I'm just like sharing my experience on that, like how to deal with that emotions, like angry, anxious, sadness, you know, sometimes you got like very hard argument. Yeah.
So you can get to the point where you're never arguing with anybody, because arguing doesn't actually help the situation. So right now, that's where you are, is that in some situations you might be arguing. But what the Buddha is teaching you how to be able to do is get to the point where you can be peaceful and calm in all situations, because trying to pressure someone to do things a certain way isn't actually going to solve your problems. You're in the unenlightened mind with its sensual desire, it'll have a craving for mom to do things a certain way. And now the mind thinks that the way to get to happiness is to try to get mom to do things this way. And if she does things this way, you'll get happy. But if she doesn't do things this way, you'll be sad. But that's not going to solve your problems, because mom can't permanently do things your way. It's just not possible. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is to eliminate the central desire where you're longing, yearning, and wanting mom to be a certain way, and realize that she is her own being and she's making decisions her own way. And all you can do is be there as a support and provide her thoughts and ideas and advice when she's open to it. When she's not open to your advice, you need to be willing to just step back and just let her do things her own way. But when the mind has craving, desire, attachment, you're going to want her to do things your way. So you can get to the point where you see mom headed for something that's going to be problematic for her, and you can say, Mom, would you like some thoughts on how to do that better? And she might say yes, and she might say no. And if she says yes, you can share that with her. But you need to be able to share it without any expectation that she'll actually do it, because she may not actually do it your way still, even though you share it with her. And if she says, no, I'm not interested in your advice, you need to be comfortable with that. Because if the mind is craving for mom to do things a certain way, when she says, no, I'm not interested in your advice, then you'll feel painful feelings. But it's not mom that's causing that. It's within your own mind. So you'll need to get to the point where you're not giving her unsolicited guidance, because this is your own ego trying to tell mom what she should or shouldn't be doing, and she's got to sort that out for herself. So we can be support, we can be encouraging, we can provide thoughts and ideas and advice to people only when they're open to it. And then we need to be comfortable that in some cases they're going to do things the way we suggested. In other cases, they're either not going to do it the way we suggested, or they're not even interested in hearing what we have to say. And then you can be comfortable either way, because you're unattached. You're not forming your feelings based on what mom chooses to do or what she chooses not to do. And then you can get to the point where you're not arguing.
Yeah, I think, thank you for your suggestion. I think it's really helpful, like, be more approachable to ask them if they want, like at this time, if they want to accept any suggestion, because that's their decision.
Exactly.
And I'm like the one, like the helper, like from a viewpoint of helper to like really help them, but not, give them like stress, because of my ego. So yeah, thank you.
I would even have situations where my mom used to come to me and she would say, David, I'm having this issue. I need your help. I'm like, okay. And she would tell me what's going on. I would spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, even an hour talking to her and explaining to her exactly how to resolve what it is that she's facing. And she's like, David, thank you so much for spending the time to help me understand that. But just to let you know, I'm not going to do it that way. And I say, okay, I understand, Mom. Do whatever you like. And then she would go off and she would do that thing. She would come back 6 months later and she would say, David, it happened again. And I was like, what happened? She was like, I didn't follow your advice and it turned out not well. And I was like, no worries, Mom, no big deal. I was like, basically she's learning. She's cultivating wisdom. And in some cases, that person's going to listen to your wisdom and they're going to make wise decisions. In other cases, they're going to have to struggle. They're going to have to trip over their feet. And that's part of them cultivating wisdom. Think about the way that you've cultivated wisdom. The times where you've cultivated the most wisdom is when you were having the most difficulties. Right? When you were having difficulties and struggles in the world, that allowed you to cultivate wisdom. So in some cases, the people who are close to you, they're going to listen to your advice and cultivate wisdom. In other cases, they're going to have to trip and stumble and fall over their own feet. And that's when they cultivate wisdom. And it's very hard for a parent to learn from their child because they don't see you as someone that can teach them because you are their child. So you need to, if you're going to help your mom, you need to be very humble and very down to earth. maybe even having her sit on the sofa and you sitting on the floor and talking to her and helping her see and understand, but only when she's open to it. And that's what will make her mind more willing to listen to what it is that you have to say. But even in situations like my mom, she actually came to me for advice and she still didn't do what I suggested. So when you're sharing with your parents, this is your generosity. You're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return, not even expecting them to do what you suggest. And that's true love, part of true love. Might cut out again.
Hello. Oh, okay.
There you go.
I'm gonna share this with my mom too, because every time, like if she always want to give me like lifelong suggestions. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I feel like I'm not patient to hear like your story or experience. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I will share this with her so we can get better.
Yeah, that's actually a good practice. Like if somebody's sharing with you in an unsolicited way, sometimes it's good to just walk away. Right? Sometimes you might see that as being rude, but you haven't done anything rude. They're actually having ego to come tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing in your life. And they're going to keep doing that as long as you sit there and listen to them. But if they learn every time they come to you in an unsolicited way, you walk away, slowly but surely, they're going to learn to stop sharing in an unsolicited way. And nothing on this path is about teaching other people. It's about training your own mind. But you can make wise decisions to skillfully just walk away when somebody's trying to teach you in an unsolicited way. And this can help mom to learn. And this is why probably you share with her in an unsolicited way, because she does that with you. And this is her gamma. This is the results of her decisions. And you guys would like to get to a point where you're respecting each other as individual beings, and you're only sharing when each other is open to it. So you're going to need to practice this for yourself in order to be able to help mom to be able to see how to do this. Sometimes when we're in relationships, we think the way to solve our problems is to get the other person to change. But actually, you need to change your own mind. And when you start practicing differently, where you don't give mom unsolicited advice, slowly but surely, she'll learn to not give you unsolicited advice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Have another question over here?
I have a question about guarding the doorway.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Just using your coffee shop example earlier, if I were you, just my personal preference, when I realized the moment that I'm attracted to the scent of the coffee, instead of walking away, I would just force myself standing in front of the coffee shop and say, yeah, stand there. You're not getting anything today. Just smell it, but like you're quitting coffee, so you're not getting any. I'm just like face right on it, sometimes forcibly. And another example, but I'm not sure if it's the same thing. The other day I was doing meditation in the temple. I was asking the monk because my legs are really painful, and he suggested that I should just observe the pain and observe it to go away. So it's kind of, I'm not even sure if it's the same thing in terms of guarding the doorway for the sensual desire, but like, I guess my question is that even a nice way to deal with it? It's kind of, I wouldn't say violent, but it's like no chill.
Okay.
You know?
So there's two different things that you're talking about here. The first one is whenever your mind is attracted to something, when you're having craving, desire, attachment, the way to get rid of that is you need to first distance yourself from the object to be able to train your mind to let it go. Okay, so whenever you're attracted to something, whenever you're craving something, you need to distance yourself from the object. The Buddha teaches this, to distance yourself from the object and then train your mind to let it go. When you're repulsed by something, when you're pushing something away, the way to train your mind to let go of your craving, desire, attachment is go towards the object. So in the example of the coffee, where I have an attraction to the coffee and the odor, I was craving it. I needed to distance myself from it. in order to train your mind to let it go. In a situation where you're walking down the street and you're repulsed by the sewer and you don't want to smell the sewer, that's where you put your mind in the situation where you're actually standing there and smelling the sewer and training your mind to be peaceful and calm. So what you were talking about was putting your mind in the situation, but you wouldn't be interested in doing that if you're attracted to it, if you're craving, desiring, attached to it. That's actually going to make your mind's craving go up. So you would like to distance yourself from those kinds of things. But the things that you're repulsed by and you're pushing away, that's what you would like to put your mind in that situation, like the sewer. Or say there's a certain fruit that you don't like. You would like to eat that fruit in order to train your mind to let it go of this craving, desire, attachment. So that's that part. The second part is, this is an unfortunate thing that some people teach, is that when you're feeling pain in the body, they teach you to observe the pain and sit through the pain. I would never suggest that, and neither did the Buddha. But unfortunately, nowadays, people do teach that. And you can even see ordained practitioners that teach this. And this is really unfortunate, because the pain that's in your body, it's there to tell you that something's wrong. Your hips hurting, your knees hurting, your body is telling the mind, like, hey, take some corrective action here because you're damaging the knee or you're damaging the hip. The Buddha, during his lifetime, did some of these types of things, and he explained how it didn't lead to enlightenment. So at one time, he was hanging himself upside down from trees. He was laying on beds of nails. He was starving his body. He was piercing his body with metal implements. And the thought was that if you could cause physical pain to the body and your mind could overcome that then you would get to enlightenment. And he realized that that's not true. That's not the way to get to enlightenment. But unfortunately, nowadays, you'll hear from people that will tell you that when you experience pain, to sit with the pain and observe the pain. There's nothing about that is going to help you get to enlightenment. And we can see that from the life of the Buddha, and you can see it from your own life too, that this pain is there to give you an indication that, hey, something's wrong. You need to take action to fix it. And that's why the Buddha gave us 4 positions of seated, lying, standing, and walking, so that you can change. So if you're in the seated position and you're feeling a lot of hip pain or knee pain, that's where you go to lying or standing or walking, because you got to go through the body in order to get to the mind. The mind is the boss. The body is the employee. If the employee is painful, it's not going to take you to go see the boss. You can't train the mind. But if the body is luxurious, it's not going to take you to go see the boss either. So you need the body to be in the middle where it's comfortable. When you're experiencing pain in the body, that's not the middle way, right? The Buddha taught the middle way. 2 opposite sides, luxurious and painful. Those are the 2 opposite sides. You need to come to the middle where the body is comfortable, and then that's what will allow you to go train the mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. You have a question?
Hello. Yeah. I'm so confused that what the true love is, especially in a relationship. Let's say when I was in a relationship, like with my ex-boyfriend, at the very beginning, I felt very joyful and very happy, and at the same time, because I had some expectations, I wanted to, like, let's say, stay with him every day. And also he gave me some response, and we felt like that is true love. But, like at the same time, sometimes I felt like very disappointed and anger and this kind of things. So after that, I just wanted to protect myself, and so I did everything I wanted, like traveled around the world, like stayed alone at weekend and did something whatever I wanted. And then he said that he felt like I was very selfish, and he couldn't feel the love, because I didn't want to stay with him every minute or every day. Mm-hmm. So I just confused what the true love is. It's just kind of a feeling. So like if I don't have any expectations, I don't have the desire to do something, like to stay with someone and to this kind of things, I just can't feel like what the true love is.
Okay, so I would teach you this. In Volume 1, Chapter 15, this is where I teach about true love. It's part of the group learning program because you need to understand what true love is in order to be able to get to enlightenment and get to peace and joy in your relationships. What you're describing, there might have been true love there, but you guys actually were practicing craving, desire, attachment. And this is the problem, that in most people, they don't have the wisdom of what true love is. There's something called craving, desire, attachment that's masquerading as love, right? So here's the way this usually works, is that you meet somebody that you're either physically attracted to, you're mentally attracted to them, maybe you're attracted to their accomplishments and what they can do for you. There's some attraction that the mind has towards this individual. And now when you meet this person, you start spending time with them. And when you first get together, everything's feeling so great and so wonderful because there isn't really so many attachments. There isn't so much expectation and longing, yearning yet. And the mind gets to a point after a month or two or whatever, where you say, I've fallen in love with you. And they say, I love you too. And now we are in love. We've fallen in love. But what's really actually happened is that this person is meeting all your expectations. They're doing the things that you want them to do. And now you say, I love you, or I have fallen in love with you. And therefore, I love you, so I want you to be with me. Right? This is the actual selfishness. This is the craving, desire, attachment. I love you, therefore I want you to be with me because you make me happy. This is an attachment, that I'm happy when I'm with you, but when I'm away from you, I'm not happy. This is not love, right? There might be love in there, but this is not the love, that I want you to be with me, and when I'm with you, I'm happy. But when I'm away from you, I'm not happy. This is an attachment. This is a craving. This is the mind holding on, wanting this person to be permanent. What true love is where you say, I love you, therefore I would like to see you be well. And whatever you need to do to be well, that's your decisions. I'm not responsible for your wellness, but I would like to see you be well. And whatever decisions you need to make in order for you to be well, you be well, right? I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. I'm here to encourage you. I'm here to be part of your life, but your wellness is based on you. And now I just love you as you are. I don't have any expectations of you. I don't want anything from you. I just would like to see you be well. And whatever decisions you make is up to you. And now whatever decisions you make is up to you. So this is true love, where you just love somebody as they are. You don't want anything from them. You don't expect anything from them. And you realize that their decisions aren't always going to match with your decisions, that they're going to make decisions differently than you would. And that's okay. And you just love this person as they are. Over here, you're going to experience discontentedness, because when there's craving, desire, attachment, that I want you to be with me and I can only be happy when you're with me, you can only be happy in that situation. When you do what I want you to do, I will be happy. Over here, you can be happy all the time because I don't want anything from you. I don't expect anything from you. I can be happy. You just be well, right? My happiness is my responsibility. Over here, with this craving, desire, attachment, when this person's not meeting your expectations or you're not meeting their expectations, you guys will break up. And you guys might say, I don't love you anymore. I have fallen out of love with you. Well, you haven't really fallen in love and out of love. What's really happened is you fell into craving and you fell out of craving. And now when they're not meeting your expectations anymore, you say, I don't love you. This is the selfishness, right? This is not true love. So oftentimes we have true love in our mind where we are interested in seeing that person be well, but it's tainted with craving, desire, attachment. The mind is wanting this person to be a certain way. There's certain expectations. So like our parents, for example, your parents probably have unconditional love. They love you as you are. You could, not that you would do this, but you could probably go out and murder somebody and your parents would still love you, right? They love you unconditionally. but they have these expectations of you. They might be putting pressure on you about your career choices or your life partner or whether you have children or not or where you live and things like this. Your parents are putting expectations on you. So they have certain true love in there, but it's tainted and polluted with these cravings, desires, attachments. And when you get these cravings, desires, attachments out of the way, then the true love can shine through, where I just love you as you are. I don't want anything from you. I don't expect anything of you. I just love you as you are. And this is something that you need to learn. You need to reflect on it, and you need to learn how to practice it. Because right now you might understand it to a certain degree, but going out into the world and practicing it is a whole nother thing. It's going to take you many months and maybe even years to get to the point where you can practice true love, where you're not putting expectations on people. Even my wife living at home with me, and we have a son, he's 12 years old. I've been working with her for multiple years. It took me probably 5 years to help her to be able to see how to practice true love with her son, where she wasn't putting expectations on him, right? Even things like going to bed at a certain time. She wanted him to go to bed at the same time as her because they used to sleep together in the same bed. All the way up until he was about 11 years old. They slept in the same bed. And if he didn't go to bed at the same time as her, she got angry. She got frustrated. She got grumpy and irritable, right? This was an expectation that she was putting on him, that he had to go to bed at the same time as her. So the mind gets to a point where it has these cravings, desires, attachments, these wants, and it feels like if I get these things, everything will be wonderful. And if this person does things my way, then that's what I want. So oftentimes what the mind does in the unenlightened state is it projects its feelings and thoughts and perceptions onto the other person and reads that as coming from you, when in reality it's coming from that person. So your ex-boyfriend saying to you that you are selfish for traveling, in reality, it's his mind that is selfish because he's wanting you to be with him, and he can only be happy when you're with him. So him calling you selfish is actually coming from his own mind, where his mind is actually the selfish one, where he's wanting you to be with him all the time, and he can only be happy if you're with him. So when you go travel, he's perceiving that as being selfish because you're not doing what he wants you to do. What he wants you to do is be with him. And that's his selfishness, but he doesn't see it that way because of the lack of wisdom in the mind. He sees it as she's doing something different than I want her to do, and I'm not happy because she's gone. So therefore, he thinks the way to solve his happiness is to hold on to you. But that's not going to solve it, because when he has you, he's happy, and when you're away, he's unhappy. The way to solve this and get to permanent happiness is he's got to train his mind to let go and not want you to be permanent, where he's holding on to you. Because you guys will be together sometimes, but then sometimes you're going to be apart. That's impermanence. But his mind is craving permanence, and he can only be happy when he's getting what he wants. And this is what all unenlightened minds are experiencing. So more and more, you need to be able to see how to have relationships without expectations. And that's where the peace and joy will be. Mm-hmm.
So like in this situation, do I need to because I love him and I want him to be happy and I stay with him, but in that way, I will not be that happy. Or I just travel and make myself happy and leave him alone.
Yeah. So the challenge that you're having is the craving, desire, attachment. Like you said, I want him to be happy. Mm-hmm. That's a craving, desire, attachment. You're longing, yearning. You're wanting something for him. So you need to be able to get to the point where you have an interest in seeing him be happy. You would like to see him be happy. You have this genuine interest in seeing him be happy, but you need to be able to understand his happiness is his responsibility. You can't make him happy, because if you are making him happy, he's only happy because you are doing something. And when you stop doing that thing, he's not happy anymore. So his happiness is attached to you. In order for him to get to pure happiness and permanent happiness, he has to find it within, where he's willing to say, hey, when you're with me, I'm happy. This is fun. This is enjoyable. And when you're away from me, I can be happy with that too. Right? So like my wife, she just traveled to the US for 2 months. She was gone. Me and my son were at home all by herself. We're lovely when mom's home. Oh, it's so much fun when mom's home. But when mom's away, we still have lots of fun, right? Our happiness isn't based on whether mom's there or not. We're not sitting around feeling miserable because mom's gone for 2 months. So your boyfriend or your ex-boyfriend, he doesn't feel good unless you're with him. So you need to go do whatever you feel comfortable with doing. If you would like to travel, go travel. If you would like to live over here, go live over there. If you would like to do this, that, or the other thing, you do that. But other people are going to try to put their expectations on you because of their central desire. They have central desire. They're wanting something from you, but you will never get to happiness by conforming to other people's expectations. You won't get to happiness, and neither will they. Because, like, for example, like, I think you guys can relate to this. If you have parents that have a certain expectation, you'll work really, 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 really hard to get to that expectation. You'll get to that expectation. They'll be happy for a few weeks. But then what happens to their expectations? Yep. They want more. And now you work hard, you work really hard, you work really hard. You get to those expectations, and now they're happy for a period of time. And then that happiness is temporary. They want more, right? So you'll never get to happiness for yourself, and they will never get to happiness by you just trying to conform to their expectations. So you have to make whatever decisions you feel comfortable with, and this person's either going to choose to be part of your life or not. Right? And what you would like to do is cultivate more and more relationships where people aren't attached to you. Because if people are attached to you, they're going to get angry and frustrated when you don't do when they want you to do, and then they're going to blame you. They're going to blame you for their anger, but you're not causing it. But because of their lack of wisdom, they think that you're the one causing their anger. And now you're stuck because you're trying to conform to their expectations. They're wanting more and more and more out of you. And then it's just going to lead to problems and difficulties. So you would like to get to a point where your partner is happy with you and they're happy away from you, right? Because sometimes we think that when someone's missing us or they feel lonely when we're not around, we think that's the love. That's not the love. That's the attachment that's causing that. So where you see people are attached to you, this is like the death of your relationship. This is where your relationship sabotage, because they're going to crush it and you're going to crush it because you're going to keep putting expectations on each other. You would like to get to the point where you have no expectations, but you're just making wise decisions as a couple to do things together sometimes, but then apart sometimes as well.
Thank you. And sorry, the last question. Like if we don't have expectation, if we don't want to stay with that guy, and why we need to like maybe start a relationship or like get married, and we can happy ever like do everything we want and don't need others.
Yeah. So having a relationship with someone like a sexual partner or life partner, this is going to come from your mind's craving, where the mind is longing, yearning, and wanting this. And you can either choose to cut that off and let it go and eliminate it and choose to be single, and you can live life perfectly peaceful and content as a single person. Or one of the other ways to eliminate a craving, desire, attachment is to fulfill it, where you actually get a partner, right? And you actually have a partner. But now as a partnership, you guys are going to have to learn how to not be attached to each other, so that you can have a healthy relationship. Like me and my wife, we've been together for 17 years, but we've been happily together for about 5 years or 6 years, right? It took us about 11 years to figure out how to not have attachment in our relationship. So for 11 years, we were together. We thought we were having a decent relationship, but we got frustrated and agitated, and we argued and we had problems. But in the last 5 or 6 years, no problems whatsoever. We're completely content and peaceful because we don't want anything from each other. But in a relationship where you have a life partner, when you guys first come together, you're going to have attachment with each other, especially if you're having sex. You're going to have attachment to each other because you want something from each other. You want money, or you want time, or you want attention, or you want affection, or you want sex or something. You're going to want something from each other. And in some situations, you're going to get it, and in some situations, you're not. But eventually, as you guys make your way through your relationship, you can get to the point where you don't want anything from each other, and you just enjoy living with each other. You enjoy spending time with each other, but you also enjoy your time when you're away from each other too, and you have fun in that situation too. So it takes you time to gradually evolve your wisdom and gradually train your mind to get to that point in your relationship. If you're not interested in a relationship and you're completely content being single, then be single. Wonderful. But if you would like to have a partner, you can do that, but you need to be able to learn how to do it with wisdom so that you're not attached to each other.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You have a question?
Hello? Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I'm about to crush the mood.
What's that?
I'm about to crush the mood. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I don't base my feelings on your questions.
Very nice. My question is about grief. Mm-hmm. How to let go when you lose someone you love really much. Not once, but twice. I lost my two brothers. One 20 years ago, one 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I can't let go.
Is this death that they died, or yeah? Okay.
My first brother died in a motorcycle accident when he was 22, and the other one drank himself to death 2 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. So the grief that you're experiencing is not coming from the love, right? Sometimes we think that the grief is from the love, and we feel like if we let go of the grief that we're eliminating the love. And you need to be able to see that the grief isn't coming from the love. What the grief is coming from is holding on and wanting them to be permanent, craving for brothers to be permanent. And you need to be able to realize that they are impermanent. Because they were born, they had to die. And it was their choices that led to their death, right? It was certain cause and effect or action and result. They're not being punished or anything like that, but it's just a sequence of events that led to their death. And now with your mind holding on and wanting them to be permanent, you're not getting what you want. And as long as they're alive, you're happy. But then when they die, your mind's going to be sad or grieve. So it's the mind holding on, wanting them to be permanent. So now that they've died, you need to be able to train your mind to let go. And that's what the breathing mindfulness meditation and the generosity is going to do, is train your mind to let go. But it's not going to be instantaneous, right? It's a gradual training of the mind to train your mind to let go. So you can get to the point where you maintain your love and your fine memories and you have appreciation for the time that you spent with them, but you don't have the grief associated with it. And this takes time to gradually evolve the mind to the point where you let go. And you can ultimately get to the point where you've done this even with people that are alive. So like, say, is mom still alive? Yeah. So like when mom dies, you're going to have a hard time with that too, because your mind hasn't been trained to let go. Right? So if you can train your mind now through the path to enlightenment to let go, and you can learn to let go of brothers, and you can regain your joy and your peace, then you can ultimately get to the point where there's other tools and techniques besides this that are going to help you train your mind to let go of mom while she's still alive. And you can have this wonderful relationship with her while she's still alive, so that then when she dies, there's no grief. That we think it's the love that's causing the grief when they die, but it's not. It's the mind holding on. So like when I was 16 years old, my very first girlfriend died, and she was actually 1 month, 2 months pregnant, when she died. And this was really impactful for me. I got very sad. I had like a 2 or 3 year depression essentially. And then not too long after that, my grandfather died when I was like 21 or 22. My grandfather died. Somebody who was really important to me in my life. And I had problems with that, but 2 or 3 months later, I was able to let it go. Then my stepfather died when I was in my 30s. No problems whatsoever. My mom died 2017. No issues whatsoever. No grief, no sadness, no nothing. It's not because I didn't love my mom. It's because I wasn't attached to her. I had trained my mind to let go. So right now, your mind just doesn't have the training that it needs. And there's this eightfold path that I would encourage you to study and learn. It's in these books, the first volume. And then since we're restarting the group learning program this Sunday, a week from today, you can gradually learn if you like. And then if you're going to be in Chiang Mai, you can learn in the courses here. But if you're not, you can learn in the live stream, and I'll gradually help you to learn how to train your mind to let go. Because it's more than just one thing, but there's a whole path that you need to be able to learn. Mm-hmm. But you can let go of the grief and maintain the love. And that's where you can be joyful. Yeah. Okay. So there's some more to share with you guys, but we've had a great conversation. I don't know. Would you guys like to keep going and learn the other two hindrances, or should we end class here? Because normally we end around 10:30 or 11. Would you guys like to learn more, or should we end here? Learn more? Okay, so we'll learn more. And if anybody has to leave, you're more than welcome to. Feel free to come and go as you like. Okay, so these next two hindrances, the fourth one is restlessness and worry. What this is where the mind is overactive and restless and worried. You might be worried about the world. And because of this, you have confusion, distraction. There's this restless state of mind. And you might even worry about your own unskillful conduct, where the mind is being unskillful and you're having missteps or mistakes, and you might feel like you're worried about these kinds of things. So if you notice your mind is overactive and restless, one of the things you might notice is like the body, you might be bobbing your knee a lot, or you might be tapping your foot, or you might be tapping your finger. It's because the mind is overactive and restless, but it's coming through in the body. So you might notice that overactivity and restlessness because the mind's overactive. And you might even be worried about the world, seeing all these complications in the world. You might actually be worried about these things. So you can overcome this. This is a hindrance to your enlightenment. And the way that you do this is through practicing tranquility, concentration, and equanimity through the 7 factors of enlightenment. Okay? The 7 factors of enlightenment have the tranquility and concentration and equanimity that's going to calm the mind down. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do that. Then there's something called doubt. This is going to hinder you from being able to get to enlightenment. What doubt is where you doubt the Buddha, the teachings, the community that you're part of, your teacher, or your own ability to get to enlightenment. You actually probably have doubt right now. Is it even possible to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state that David's talking about? You might even think that enlightenment isn't even a thing. You might just be thinking that David maybe he's lying. I don't know. I don't know what you think, right? Who knows what you might think? You might have this certain doubt of whether this is actually true or whether it's even possible for you to get to enlightenment. If you have doubt in your mind, this will hinder you from getting to enlightenment, where you're doubting the Buddha, the teachings, the community that you're part of, your teacher, or your own ability to get to enlightenment. The way you eliminate doubt is through investigating the teachings. When you're investigating and examining the teachings, you'll be able to see that they're true, because as you're learning, you're reflecting to independently verify, and you're practicing, and you see the improvement to the condition of your mind, you'll know that the teachings are leading to an improved life, an improved condition of mind. So you don't eliminate doubt through blind belief or faith. That's not going to eliminate your doubt. The way you get rid of doubt is you investigate the teachings, you examine them, you study them, you then reflect on them to independently verify, are they true or are they false? And then you practice them, integrating them into your life and training your mind. And then as you see improvement to the condition of your mind, you'll eventually get to the point where you have no doubt that these teachings are leading to your enlightenment. You won't be enlightened by that point, but you will get to a point where you've seen enough progress where you have no doubt that these teachings are leading to your enlightenment. So if you have doubt right now, which is very common for someone who comes to the path to enlightenment to have doubt, you can actually harness this. I had a lot of doubt when I first came to the path to enlightenment, and I harnessed it, and I turned it into an inquisitive mind. I rolled up the sleeves. I said, yeah, I doubt this. I don't know whether these teachings are true or false. I don't know. So you know what? I'm going to investigate them. I'm going to examine them. I'm going to reflect on them to verify whether they're true or false. And I'm going to practice them to be able to see the truth for myself. And that's how you basically eliminate this doubt, is through investigation of the teachings. And eventually you'll see so much progress that you'll know that the Buddha lived. You'll have no doubt in his existence and that he actually lived. You'll have no doubt about his teachings because you know them well enough. You'll have no doubt about the community that you're part of and the people that are learning and growing with you. You'll have no doubt about your teacher because you will have seen that this person guided you to an improved state of mind. And you'll have no doubt in your ability to get to enlightenment because you've been doing it. You've been making your way to it. And you can see that the condition of your mind is gradually improving. So this is how you get rid of doubt, is through investigation of the teachings, not through blind belief or faith. That'll never eliminate your doubt, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because either you convinced yourself to believe it or somebody else convinced you to believe it. So you would like to get to wisdom where you know the truth. And that's where investigation is going to help you to do that. So these are the 5 hindrances and the solutions. And there's actually one hindrance that is the biggest hindrance of all of them. It's called ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom, the confusion. The Buddha doesn't include it here, but he includes it in a lot of other teachings. It's the hindrance of all hindrances. Because if you don't understand what you don't understand, if you have a lack of wisdom, there's no way for you to ever get to enlightenment, right? So prior to studying with me, students typically firmly believe that other people are causing them to be angry. You might still believe that because you haven't seen the Four Noble Truths yet. When I walk you through the Four Noble Truths, that's where a student fully starts to awake to understanding that their mind is causing their own discontent feelings. So this unknowing of true reality, this lack of wisdom, you will have this lack of wisdom firmly believing that other people are causing you to be angry. But when you learn something like the Four Noble Truths, you can have a breakthrough that in 4 simple statements, you'll understand the problem in your mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward in a way that you can independently verify. And you'll be able to see the truth for yourself that your mind is causing these feelings. And then you'll have the wisdom to actually solve it, right? But if you have ignorance or the unknowing of true reality or misunderstanding or misperception, with that lack of wisdom, you'll never get to enlightenment. So ignorance or the unknowing of true reality or confusion or lack of wisdom, this is like the hindrance of all hindrances. And that's why when students first start studying with me, I guide them to understand that the ultimate goal in this path is to cultivate wisdom. There's no belief in the teachings whatsoever. You need to be able to cultivate wisdom, and that's what's going to eradicate the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. So this is like the hindrance of all hindrances, because all the unskillfulness is coming from this lack of wisdom. Okay, so any questions on these? Those of you guys online, you can ask questions too by putting them into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Okay, I don't see any questions there online. All right. So there's this last thing that I usually share here at the end. It's called right mindfulness. This is something that I teach as part of the Eightfold Path. You're going to need to have right mindfulness in order to be able to train your mind. As we talked earlier, generally, you can think of mindfulness as awareness of mind, where you have this general awareness of the mind. You need to understand the thoughts and the feelings that you have. You need to be aware of these things that are going on in the mind. But more specifically, you're going to need to know the 4 foundations of mindfulness and develop these. What the 4 foundations of mindfulness are is where you're aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. What we're talking about here with bodily sensations is before your mind becomes discontent, there's going to be some bodily sensation that is occurring. It's like an early warning system. If you think about the times where you've been angry or sad or frustrated or agitated, there's some bodily sensation that you may or may not be aware of right now. It might have been tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. These are all bodily sensations that are alerting you that you are about to get angry. Your mind is about to be frustrated. And what the Buddha teaches you is when you're experiencing these bodily sensations is to cut it off and let it go so that the mind doesn't form the conditioned feeling. Because if you allow the mind to form the conditioned feeling, it's going to keep experiencing it over and over and over again. So these bodily sensations that I describe, it's like the mind is saying, I'm about to get angry. 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 And you're saying, nope, not going to let you do that. I'm not going to let you form a conditioned feeling, right? If you keep allowing the mind to form the conditioned feeling, it's going to stay wired that way. So you're not suppressing the feelings. You're actually cutting them off and letting them go before they actually form, right? So the way you can think about this is if you were going from like Australia to Indonesia in a boat and you're out in the middle of the ocean, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water comes in the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. You got to get this water out of the boat. But if you can prevent it from ever coming into the boat, you've just saved yourself. You can sail your way from Australia to Indonesia, no problem. So if you allow the mind to become angry, you've got a big problem to deal with because you've got to get it out now. So what the Buddha is teaching you is that you have an early warning system. There's these bodily sensations that are occurring. whether it's a conditioned pleasant feeling, painful feeling, or neither painful nor pleasant, like boredom or loneliness or shyness or resentment, any of these feelings, there's going to be a bodily sensation that you may or may not even be aware of right now. Your meditation is going to help you clue into these more and more so that you can be aware. And when you're experiencing that bodily sensation and the mind's like, hey, I'm about to get angry, I'm about to get angry, I'm about to get angry, you can cut that off and let it go. Right? You can train your mind and rewire it so it doesn't keep forming these conditioned feelings. If it does become a feeling, because between now and enlightenment, you are going to experience some conditioned feelings, you can cut it off and let it go as a feeling too. Or if you don't cut it off as a feeling, it's going to affect the condition of your mind. What the condition of the mind is if you've been angry or agitated for like a few hours or a few days or like a week or so, this is the condition of your mind. Have you ever been angry or agitated for a week? Of course you have, right? You've been grieving for many years, right? This is the condition of the mind because there was a bodily sensation. You didn't have the wisdom. None of us did when we were growing up to cut off and let go as a bodily sensation. We formed a feeling, and now that feeling continuing to persist in the mind, now the general condition of the mind is going to be affected. And now when you have a condition of your mind of sadness or anger or what have you, it forms what's called a mental object. A mental object is a deeply rooted container that is in the mind that, in this case, this example is ill will. All these 5 hindrances are mental objects. So ill will is a deeply rooted container that keeps getting fed. When we were first born, we didn't have ill will. We didn't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies, right? We didn't do that because we didn't have ill will in our mind when we were a child. That's why we're so joyful and so happy when we're children, right? We're like, everything's wonderful. I'm just a kid. I don't have any ill will. My mind's not so polluted when we're a child. But we formed these mental objects over time because we had cravings in our mind. We wanted that ice cream. We wanted that chocolate. And we said, Mommy, Mommy, Daddy, Daddy, buy me chocolate, buy me ice cream. And they said, okay, here you go, here you go. Here's your chocolate, here's your ice cream. You're the best Mommy and Daddy ever. Oh, this is so great. You're giving me my chocolate and my ice cream. But at some point we were like, Mommy, Daddy, buy me chocolate, buy me ice cream. And they said, no, you can't have it. We got angry because our craving wasn't being fulfilled. We wanted that chocolate and ice cream to be permanent. And as long as we got it, we were happy. But when we didn't get it, we were angry. And now we attributed it to mom and dad. You're the worst mom and dad ever. Oh, I don't like you anymore, right? And now our mind experienced the bodily sensation. We experienced the feeling of anger, frustration. It affected the condition of our mind for several minutes or hours or days, and then we formed this mental object of ill will in the mind. And now there's this deeply rooted container in the mind where right now you don't have any anger, but if somebody triggers one of your cravings, that anger is going to arise, right? Because you have that mental object, that deeply rooted container of ill will. So what you're doing is you're putting this blockade at the bodily sensations. You're cutting off and letting go at the bodily sensations, protecting your mind and preserving the mind. But then all the while you're working to break up these mental objects and purify the mind and get rid of them. That's what the Buddha is teaching you how to do. So mindfulness is so important for this. You need to ultimately develop awareness of the bodily sensations that are the early warning system prior to your mind becoming discontent. Be aware of the feelings that are in the mind, be aware of the condition of your mind, and be aware of those mental objects. So I'll explain to you how this works in a real life situation. Let's say you're watching the news and something comes on the news and you're noticing the frustration building and you're noticing the bodily sensations. What I'm suggesting that you do in order to train your mind is to cut that off, go for a walk, right? Don't just sit there and watch the news. Don't dwell in that frustration. Don't allow the mind to form that feeling of frustration. No reason to allow the mind to do that. If you're watching the news and you're starting to notice frustration arising, this is the mind craving for the world to be a certain way. And the world can't be that way. It's not going to be the way you want it to be. The world's going to be the way that it's going to be. Everybody's making all these decisions in the world, and you can't control that. So if you're watching the news and you're feeling frustration starting to build as a bodily sensation, this is triggering one of your cravings. And the best thing you can do is just get up and go for a walk, or go for a bike ride, or go to the bathroom and wash your hands, or get a glass of water or something like this. If you allow the mind to dwell in that, it's going to form the feeling. And now the mind's frustrated. And now if you don't cut it off and let it go there, it's going to affect the condition of your mind. For multiple minutes or hours or days, you're going to be generally agitated and frustrated. And then it's going to feed this mental object of ill will. So you would like to cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation, catching that sooner and sooner. And your breathing mindfulness meditation is going to help you to be able to cut that off and let it go, to notice it when it's occurring, and then cut it off and let it go so you can rewire the mind so it doesn't keep staying wired this way. Okay? So any questions on mindfulness and right mindfulness? Okay, so this is everything I have to share with you guys today. Thank you guys online. Thank you everyone here who's been learning. Pleased to share the teachings of the Buddha with you guys. If you guys would like to learn more, there's opportunity for you to do that. You're welcome to come talk with me, and I can get you plugged in to the various resources that you need, whether it's classes, courses, retreats, whether it's the books, the videos, the audiobooks, the personal guidance, whatever it is. All of it's available for you at no cost. There's never a time where you're ever going to need to pay for anything. It's here for you to help you to learn and grow and develop. Okay, so next Sunday, I'm going to be starting the group learning program from the very beginning. But this Wednesday, we're also going to have class here too, where I'm going to guide students in meditation. And then I'm just going to open up to any and all questions that you like. So if you'd like to come on Wednesday and you're around, or if you'd like to tune into the live stream, we'll do meditation together. And then I'll just open up to free form questions, anything you guys would like to ask. And then on this Friday, we're going to have a game night where about every 2 weeks, we have a social event here where we get together and we play board games. Students will sometimes bring snacks and refreshments and things like this, and we just hang out. This is Friday at 6 p.m. You guys are welcome to come. You're welcome to bring friends and other people if you'd like. We have a bunch of board games where we just sit around and talk and have fun. We have a little bit of music playing. It's a really good time, so you guys are always welcome to come to that too. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class, okay? Have a lovely rest of your day. Take care. Sawadee Kap. Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.